Hi, I'm Allie, and today I'm going to be sharing my recommendations for Hispanic Heritage Month. In the United States, Hispanic Heritage Month goes from September 15th to October 15th of each year, celebrating the culture and history of Hispanic and Latino Americans. It started in the 60s and was originally a commemorative week, but then in the 80s it was stretched out to be a full month. Most other Heritage Months go from the first of the month, but Hispanic Heritage Month starts in the middle of September in recognition of the start of the Mexican War of Independence, which is when the majority of countries in Central America and Mexico celebrate their independence. To start us off, I have two books about Our Lady of Guadalupe, one of the most famous Catholic Marian apparitions. So a Marian apparition is the supernatural appearance of the Blessed Virgin Mary to one or more people, and the church considers these to be a private revelation and they are not dogma. So to put it plainly, that means that a Catholic is not required to believe in the truth of private revelation. I personally strongly believe in the truth of Our Lady of Guadalupe and many other Marian apparitions. I have included works about Our Lady of Guadalupe because the apparition is of great historical and cultural significance, and her shrine at the Basilica of Our Lady of Guadalupe in Mexico City is one of the most visited holy sites in the world. In December 1531 in Mexico City, the Virgin Mary appeared 4 times to St. Juan Diego, and on the 4th visit, she left an imprint of her image on his tilma, which is a type of cloak worn by Aztecs and other peoples of central Mexico. This image is the origin of the art that is found on items like devotional candles and medals and blankets and statues that are today heavily associated with Hispanic culture. The Blessed Virgin Mary, under her title Our Lady of Guadalupe, is the patroness of the Americas, meaning the totality of North and South America, as well as Mexico specifically. And St. Juan Diego is the patron saint of the indigenous peoples of America. I have 2 books to recommend. The first is Our Lady of Guadalupe, Mother of the Civilization of Love, co-written by Carl Anderson and Msgr Eduardo Chávez, who was the postulator of St. Juan Diego's cause for sainthood. Mother of the Civilization of Love is predominantly a history book about the context in which the apparition occurred and the events that followed, and the history of the scientific examination of the tilma. The book is not pure history and science. There's also a large amount of religious symbolic analysis and philosophy. So if you are interested in learning more about Our Lady of Guadalupe or the conversion of the Aztecs and other Mexican peoples to Christianity, then I do suggest this book. My other recommendation is The Lady of Guadalupe by Tomie dePaola. This is a retelling of the story of St. Juan Diego and the events of the apparition, but as a picture book that is accessible to preschoolers and up. So if you want more of a narrative version of the story of Our Lady of Guadalupe, or if you are wanting to share this story with a child, then I highly suggest trying to find a copy of this book. It is out of print, so you may struggle to find an affordable secondhand copy, so please do check your local library. Next, I have a children's historical fiction novel called Esperenza Rising by Pam Muñoz Ryan. Esperenza Rising is set in 1930 and was inspired by the life of the author's grandmother. It is about a young, wealthy Mexican girl named Esperenza whose life suddenly unravels when bandits murder her father. Finding herself suddenly in poverty, Esperenza struggles to adapt and reconcile her new life circumstances as she and her mother immigrate to the United States, along with some of their former servants, to seek work as laborers. This is a character-focused, riches to rags story about hardship and loss and hope and determination. This book came out near my 11th birthday, and I remember it being featured in my school library's Hispanic Heritage Month display. I read it along with many of the other kids in my class, and it was very impactful to us. I remember multiple children crying over this book. The intended age, I would think, is about 9 to 15, though I do think that this is a children's book that adults can still appreciate. It may be simple in terms of plot complexity and vocabulary, but the themes and the characters in this book are not simple. Next, one of my favorite magical realism stories, The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho. It is an allegorical folktale retelling about a shepherd boy who goes on a quest for treasure. In my opinion, this book has really been co-opted by the current New Age movement, and for some reason, people like to treat this like it's a self-help book, which I don't understand. But I also find myself vehemently disagreeing with both 5-star and 1-star ratings for this book. So it's possible that I'm just the really weird one here and I'm the one who doesn't get it. But if you do read this, I highly suggest that you approach it as a folk tale. If you have read The Little Prince by Antoine de Saint-Exupéry as an adult and liked it, then I think there is a chance that you will like The Alchemist in the same way that I do. My next suggestion for Hispanic Heritage Month is quite dissimilar from everything else on my list, and it is Outlander by Diana Gabaldon. Outlander is the story of an English woman, a World War II nurse, who gets thrown backwards 200 years in time to 1743 in Scotland. She is unable to return to her own time, and she must build a new life for herself, which includes agreeing to an arranged marriage with a Scottish Highlander named Jamie Fraser. These novels are a genre-blending mix of historical fiction and adventure and romance and fantasy. Outlander is my favorite series, and I did not include it in my fantasy top 10 video because I consider it to be predominantly historical fiction. But please be assured that this does come with my highest recommendation. I have not added the Outlander series to this video just to be sneaky. Diana Gabaldon's ancestry is English and Mexican American, and you can read some of her thoughts about her Mexican ancestry and also bandit folk heroes in the foreword that she wrote for the Penguin Classics edition of The Life and Adventures of Joaquín Murieta. Diana Gabaldon's parents' relationship caused a scandal back in 1950 when they got married because her mother was white and her father was Mexican American. There was even a public petition taken out against their marriage. You can read more of her parents' story on her blog, which I will link below. There is a recurring theme in the Outlander books of intercultural marriage, starting with the protagonists, Jamie and Claire, who come from different times, different countries, different cultures. And this element of the merging of two people from different backgrounds and trying to make the pieces of their lives fit together to figure out where compromise needs to be made and who needs to make it. This element of the story, I think, was very heavily flavored by Diana Gabaldon's parents' relationship and her own life experiences. Diana Gabaldon has a unique insight thanks to her heritage that I think gives her stories a living element. While there is a lot of adventure and politics and drama within the Outlander series, it is ultimately a story about marriage and family. Please read Outlander, the first book in the series, and give it a shot. Moving into the realm of semi-autobiographical works, I have 2 vignette-style pieces, starting with How the Garcia Girls Lost Their Accents by Julia Alvarez. Following the 1960 Trujillo Revolution in the Dominican Republic, the Garcia family moved to New York, forcing the daughters to cope with a simultaneous culture shift and coming of age. The story of immigration focuses on the effects of the environment on the self, and each of the girls goes through a loss of identity as they move to the US, some of it more intentional and some involuntary. The girls experience an internal division and seek to find their identities under the pressure to assimilate to an American norm. I think this novel's perspective on the American propensity to trivialize and denigrate cultural diversity is highly relevant today. The Garcias find that Hispanic and Caribbean cultures are all lumped together as immigrants, with no proper attention given to the differences between groups or their reasons for immigrating. And they struggle to find the balance between retaining their culture and assimilation. So this is the core theme of the novel. The loss of their accents acts as an analogy for their conformity with American culture. Today, in the 20s, we find this same attitude that was present in the 60s and 70s when this story was set, and in the 90s when this story was released. But today, a great idol of our culture is racial diversity. And today, our media separates everyone into white or POC, and we are obsessed with skin color more than ever, while devaluing cultural diversity in America. America prides itself on inclusivity for having many skin colors, but our behavioral norms are rigidly enforced. Today, you can look however you want, you can dress however you want, but you must think and act the same, and you must hold the same beliefs as everyone else. We welcome any difference in culture or religion or perspective so long as it fits within the boundaries of our norms, and then we pride ourselves on these subtle, borderline non-existent differences. The theme of these girls having to relinquish their differences in order to fit within those boundaries is why this book is still so relevant today. This novel is told in reverse chronological order through a series of 15 short stories, beginning when the girls are adults and have assimilated and lost their accents. And we travel back in time with them, seeing their adolescence and the events that led to their family leaving the Dominican Republic and eventually to the innocence of their childhoods. My next semi-autobiographical story is The House on Mango Street by Sandra Cisneros. It is similar to how the Garcia girls lost their accents because they are both told in short stories, and they are about adolescent girls and finding their identity. However, Mango Street is much more about emotions and feelings, and in a way, it's the opposite of the story of the Garcia girls. Mango Street is about a girl growing up as an impoverished Mexican American who feels like an other, and her attempts to process this feeling of otherness. In my opinion, Mango Street is the better of the two books, but they are different enough that to compare them feels unfair. The Garcia Girls is a story, but Mango Street is more like a work of poetry. The structure of this book is complex. It's a series of vignettes that can be read individually, but they also come together to create one big story, sort of like a mosaic or a collage. Sandra Cisneros was inspired by the works of Jorge Borges, and while I am still new to Borges, I do think that there is a link between them. And speaking of Jorge Borges, I'll move on to my last category, which is books that I have not read, but that I want to. Starting with collected fictions, aka Ficciones by Borges. I very recently received this collection right here as a birthday present, and I am very excited to read some more of it. This is a collection of short stories, and most, if not all of them, have fantasy elements. At this point, I have read a small handful of his stories, and I am just absolutely enchanted by the sense of like secret hidden worlds in his stories. So far, reading Borges has been like my childhood excursions on the beach, like searching for tide pools and little creatures. I really love it. Another book I've had my eye on is The House of the Spirits by Isabel Allende. All I really know about it is that it's about the spirit world and the devastating effects of socialism in South America. I also very much want to read Gabriel Garcia Marquez's books, particularly 100 Years of Solitude. I know that I began reading that as a teenager, but I never finished, and I am excited to try that again. Also, I plan to read The Obscene Bird of Night by Jose Donoso, aka The Bird Book. Some of my friends read this recently and have practically started a cult around it, and I don't really know anything about it other than there's a deformed man and some horror elements, and that apparently there's no bird in the bird book. I started off very unwilling to read this, but I have been talked into it, mostly thanks to Harold Bloom including it in his Western canon list. I wouldn't say that I am excited to read this, but I will read it and I will make a video about it when I do. And finally, 2666, 2666, 2666, I'm not really sure how you're supposed to say the name, but it's by Robert Bolaño. It's been on my TBR after being highly praised by a couple of friends, but I keep hearing about how disgustingly violent this book is, and after the experience I had with Cormac McCarthy's Blood Meridian, I'm hesitant to read it now. Anyways, I think that's about all. If you have any suggestions for me of Hispanic or Latino authors or books, please tell me in the comments. And thank you so much for watching, and God bless.